So let's get started. If Debbie, can you do the opening prayers, please?
So let's begin by taking a few deep cleansing breaths. As we relax, release, and bring the mind home. Assume your meditation posture. Breathe naturally. Scan your body for any places of tension. And release them. And release also any preoccupations, concerns you have from the day. Any speed or aggression you've accumulated. And bring your mind home to the here and the now, to this time and place of practice together, which we enter into now with a spacious sense of joy and equanimity. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness in the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering in the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. And may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. And may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion.
Very good. Thank you very much. So tonight we're going to we'll recite the Purification Prayer on page 14. And then after that, then we're going to go back to page 141. That's what we recited last week and didn't give an explanation. There wasn't time for an explanation. So we're going to start with that. And that prayer on 141 is something that we recite each day during this part 2, which is you'll see is a prayer, an aspiration prayer for the Wrathful Deities. So we're going to explain that, and then hopefully there'll be time afterwards that we'll be able to go back and pick up on day number 9 with the Vajrasattva and do that. It's a short 1 page or so. We'll be able to do that. So does anybody have any comments or questions? Anything that you would like to bring up based on what we've talked about last week or any time before that? Okay. All right, well, very good then. Curtis, you have your book. Can you read, can you recite the purification practice on page 14, 15, and 16? And
yes, I can.
All right. And so will you include the English translation of the first mantra and then recite that mantra 3 times and then 1 time give the English translation that's in the small print there. So if you will do that all the way to page 16 and recite the 100-syllable mantra 3 times, please. Everybody can follow along, can recite along with him. Please turn your microphones off so we don't have feedback problems.
The English translation, you're referring to the Om Ahom Bodhicitta?
Correct. You see it in that little the small print to the right.
Okay, I can read that.
Okay, thank you.
Natural liberation of habitual tendencies, purification. Om Ahom Bodhicitta Mahasukha Yana Dhatu A Om Rulu Rulu Hom Bio Hom. It is the unified intention of the body, speech, and mind of the 42 peaceful and 58 wrathful deities of the great Buddha field that displays the wisdom that cuts through all ignorance to manifest their wisdom for the benefit of the enlightenment of all sentient beings. From the field of reality's expanse, uncreated and pure, within a celestial palace, which is a seminal point of light, pure, unceasing, and radiant, through the natural expressive power of one's own mind, uncontrived and empty, intrinsic awareness, radiant and empty, arises in the form of Vajrasattva. Seated upon a bejeweled throne adorned with lotus, sun, and moon cushions, the right hand holds the Vajra at the heart, symbolizing the union of awareness of absolute wisdom and emptiness. The left hand supports a bell resting on the hip, symbolizing the union of wisdom, appearances, and emptiness. And the head is adorned with a garland of perfect Buddhas, representing the 5 enlightened families of those gone to bliss. Thus, Vajrasattva manifests in the form of the Buddha body of perfect resource, exquisitely adorned with jewels and silks, seated in the posture of royal ease, with the right hand extended and the left drawn in. Radiating at the heart is the seed syllable Hum, surrounded by the 100-syllable mantra. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenapa Tishtadrita Mebawa Sutokaya Mebawa Supokaya Mebawa Anurakta Mebawa Sarva Sita Me Prayasa Sarva Karma Sutsame Sitsantriya Kuru Hung Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajra Vame Mutsa Vajra Baba Mahasamaya Sattva Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenapa Tishtadrita Mebawa Sutokaya Mebawa Supokaya Mebawa Anuraktu Mebawa Sarva Sita Me Prayasa Sarva Karma Sutsame Sitsantriya Kuru Hong Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mami Musa Vajra Baba Mahasamaya Sattva Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenapa Tishtadrita Mebawa Sutokaya Mebawa Supokaya Mebawa Anuraktu Mebawa Sarva Sita Me Prayasa Sarva Karma Sutsame Sitsantriya Kuru Hong Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mami Mutsa Vajra Baba Mahasamaya Sattva. And we repeat that so that the two obscurations may be cleansed.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. All right, so now if everyone can go to page 141 in the Bardo Thodol book. So this, we recite this every day. Page 141. We recite this every day at the between day 8 and day 37 of the recitation of the Bardo Thodol. If we're reciting this whole book for someone who has passed for the 49 days. If we're studying this, we can recite this anytime. But this here is brings all the wrathful deities together in this this visualization, being able to understand this. So as we go along with this, maybe that'll become a little bit more clear. So we read this last week, and I'm going to give an explanation about this now. So if you have questions as I go along, don't hesitate to turn your microphone on and say something. So I begin on page 141. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchuk Pema Dorje. Through the expressive power of emptiness, the Buddha body of reality has arisen as the peaceful deities. Recognize this. Through the expressive power of radiance, the Buddha body of perfect resource has arisen as the wrathful deities. Recognize this. So what this means, the Buddha body of reality is the essence, is the Dharmakaya, is the Buddha that is the pure lights, the peaceful deities that we are trying to become liberated with, that we are trying to become the Buddha body of reality. So that is in the heart center of our heart center of the deity, of ourselves. So if we look at the picture again, I'll put this up one more time. This was, here we are. So this is Vajrasattva. So here in the heart center are the peaceful deities. Here at the throat are the hero awareness holders. And here in the head and the brain are the wrathful deities. So, so this is what this is referring to, that here in the heart center would be the Buddha of natural resource, or how does this sound? The Buddha body of reality. Then in the brain would be the Buddha body of perfect resource. So the resource is sort of like, if one of the ways in which I think of it, it's like a library. it's like a body of intellectual work that we refer to be able for us, our human minds, to be able to understand what it is that we're doing. All the symbolism is there. All the meaning of the symbolism is there. And then what we have to do is be able to transcend that, let that go. And then we go to the Buddha body of reality. That would be the liberation. But this body of perfect resource, this Buddha body of perfect resource, is where all these deities are, these what we call the Sambhogagaya deities. These are the emanation deities, the enjoyment body deities. And we say that it's enjoyment because we're learning so much. We're recognizing so much. We're recognizing and remembering those experiences that we've had many times as we've died many times and been born many times. So remember, all this is symbolic. So it's not the characterizations, it's not the pictures that we are remembering, but it is the wisdom that we are remembering. So I know that may sound rather abstract at this point, but once we're able to have a glimpse of that, it begins to say, oh, that's what it is. And the way that we have a glimpse at that is by starting our practice and doing this over and over again until we start having those glimpses. And then we bring those glimpses together. They be broader, they be deeper, they become like visions. We begin to recognize this and bring the Bardo of reality then comes back into our ordinary lives. So this Buddha body of perfect resource is like this intellectualization. These are all the meditational deities. And I said this was the emanational body. No, it's the subtle body, the subtle enjoyment body. So this is the body of wisdom, the body of skillful means, the body of the intellect. So what we are doing now is a Buddha body of perfect resource study, investigation. If we could sit here and go through a meditation, go into samadhi, and be successful at being able to go into the Bardo of reality, then this part here, this body, this Sambhogagaya, would not be necessary. So this is here so that we can study this. So this has arisen as the Wrathful Deities. So this Buddha body of perfect resource has arisen as the Wrathful Deities. And remember, I said that the Wrathful Deities are the emanations of the peaceful deities. So when we die and we are released of our physical body, of our intellect, and we go into the Bardo of reality now, and we're not able to liberate through the Bardo of the deities there, the peaceful deities, that we fall away and we go into these wrathful deities who are emanations of the peaceful deities, who are there to be able to kind of remind us, to show us very, very powerfully our way back to the peaceful deities to be able to attain enlightenment. So now the second paragraph here, it says, at this time, when the assembly of the 58 wrathful blood-drinking deities manifests from within your brain, you should recognize all that arises as the naturally arising luminosity of your own awareness. Then, if recognition occurs, you will immediately attain Buddhahood, inseparable from the blood-drinking deities. So what this means is that if these 58 blood-drinking deities manifest, this is all manifestation within ourselves, and this enormous power that they represent. And we see this as our own luminosity. We're seeing this as part of who we are, spiritually speaking. And then if that recognition occurs, we'll immediately attain the Buddhahood, because then that will mean that we're all coming together with not just the wrathful deities, these fierce deities, but also from their emanation points of the peaceful deities that we talked about in the weeks before. So we become inseparable from the blood drinking deities, who are inseparable from the peaceful deities. So now page 142. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchok Pema Dorje, if even now you do not recognize this reality and become afraid and turn away from the visionary appearances, you will go on to experience yet further suffering. If recognition does not occur, all the blood-drinking deities will be perceived as Yama. You will be overwhelmed by fear, by awe, and by terror at the sight of the blood-drinking deities, and you will faint. Those visionary appearances, which are all natural manifestations of actual reality, will seem to have become demons, and you will continue to roam in cyclic existence. But even now, if you are not awed and not terrified, you will avoid the continued wandering within cyclic existence. Let me repeat that last line. But even now, if you are not awed and not terrified, you will avoid the continued wandering within cyclic existence. So what that means is, if you recognize this, and you're able to become liberated. So we go through these stages, and each one of these stages is an opportunity for us to become liberated. And there's several stages here. So now we're meeting these wrathful deities, these fierce deities, to really help us to overcome our internal demons and so on. So it says here in the beginning of this paragraph again, it says, if you don't recognize this and you turn away from these visionary appearances and what they symbolize, you will go on to experience yet further suffering. If recognition does not occur, you will perceive all these deities as Yama. So Yama is like the collection of all these deities as as something that would appear to be demons to us, because it's very terrible, and we're not able to recognize their compassion, their loving kindness, their bodhicitta. We see them as threats to ourselves, that we're in this Bardo of reality and we've lost our way. So if we don't recognize this as our own true nature, as our own loving kindness, as our own compassion, we may be terrified by that, put off by that, and think of these beings as Yama. So let me show you, there is an illustration here. So here is Yama Dhammaraja. So remember, these are all symbolic. So here, this is the embodiment of the forces of impermanence and the infallible laws of cause and effect. So this is like truth. This is like the reality of who we are, all in one form here, and very fierce, and looks like a buffalo, has a buffalo head, and very rotund, has an animal body, and has a female on his side here, and has all these flames, these wisdom fire around him, and you can see that there are these human forms that are below him on this sun disk here of wisdom, and so on, who are being crushed by him. He's literally sitting on them. So what this is representing is that we are unaware of what this Yama represents as our own demons, and we're being crushed by our own demons as the infallible laws of cause and effect, which is karma, the embodiment of the forces of impermanence, that we are not able to abide in impermanence. We're trying to hold on. We want permanence. We want something that we can count on and so on. So we're not literally seeing the deity. We're seeing what he represents. So we need to understand what they represent. And we need to be able to contemplate that, to be able to put that into, into our thought process. So the blood drinking will be perceived as Yama. You will be overwhelmed by fear, by awe, and by terror at the sight of the blood drinking deities, and you will faint. Those visionary appearances, which are natural manifestations of actual reality, natural manifestations of actual reality. What that means is we're seeing ourselves, but we're seeing our defiled selves. We're seeing our confused selves. We're seeing our emotion selves. We're seeing that negativity and so on. And then we're automatically or immediately it gets transposed into this demon that appears as Yama, which are natural manifestations of actual reality, will seem to have become demons, and you will continue to roam in cyclic existence. In other words, we're not being rescued by this. We're being tortured by this. We're torturing ourselves because we don't understand what Yama is, what Yama represents. So we need to know Yama. We need to know our demons. We need to know our difficulties. If we want to, if we have a disease and we want to get, some cure for the disease, usually it's some kind of an inoculation or it's some kind of a vaccine or something. We have to look at the cause and we have to treat the cause to be able to protect ourselves from getting the disease. Here, our disease is our being stuck in the Bardo and being reborn again as a human being or something else. So we want to be able to liberate ourselves. So it says, the last sentence again says, but even now, if you are not awed and not terrified, you will avoid the continued wandering within cyclic existence, meaning you will be liberated. You will be able to recognize that the deity, you will be able to recognize the peaceful deities, and you will be able to liberate. The next paragraph says, O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu Kunchok Pema Dorje, the largest of the Buddha bodies of the peaceful and wrathful deities will be as vast as the sky. The medium ones will be the size of Mount Sumeru, and even the smallest will be the size of 18 of our bodies, standing one above the other. Do not be afraid. All phenomenal existence is now arising as luminosities and Buddha bodies. By recognizing all the present visionary appearances to be the natural luminosity of your own intrinsic awareness, manifesting as lights and Buddha bodies, you will dissolve inseparably within the lights and Buddha bodies, and Buddhahood will be attained. So this is a very, very powerful, visionary experience. And if we can, as ordinary practitioners in our ordinary mind now, be able to break through and not see just this earth that we are on, but be able to see the solar system, be able to see the galaxies, be able to see the super galaxies and see all these celestial bodies that we've been able to see through the photographs of Hubble telescope and all that and so on, and be able to see this all as this phenomenal display of our true nature. We're just one little tiny part of it that can't even be imagined how small it is in the context of all what we see out in the space. So these beings are all part of that. We're seeing that all this is all part of that, because we see space, but we're not seeing the radiation that is there. There's all kinds of particles that are there and so on. And all this is Buddha. All this is truth. All this is reality in a physical form. But we can also experience this in a spiritual form. So this is what our practice is to be able to cultivate that vision of the spiritual form. So the spiritual form has this magnanimity of it, this immenseness of it, that, as it says here, the as vast as the sky, the Buddha bodies and peaceful wrathful deities will be vast as the sky, the medium ones the size of Mount Sumeru, and even the smallest the size of 18 of our bodies. So to be able to see that this is relative to the earth, relative to all of space, all of creation and so on, and that the sizes and so on are relative, and that the immensity of this, we have to begin to bring into a thought that allows us to recognize that we are all part of this. Our immensity is that big. We are as big as the universe in this spiritual sense. Physically, we're very tiny. But spiritually, we are all part of the same thing. It's all part of us. It says, by recognizing all the present visionary appearances to be the natural luminosity of your own intrinsic awareness, manifesting as lights in Buddha bodies, you will dissolve inseparably within the lights and Buddha bodies, and Buddhahood will be attained. So how big is your consciousness? How big is your mind? How limitless is your imagination? It's as limited as you make it, or it's as huge as you can make it. But that's all within our brain. Our spirituality now is transcending all of that. So if we hold ourselves back, then everything becomes very compact, very small, and so on. But if we allow ourselves to be totally free, totally expansive, there are no limits, there are no boundaries. So this is what we're trying to do. So the next, so it says here that your own intrinsic awareness manifesting as lights and Buddha bodies. So at some point, I know I've said several times to you that we have to begin to experience this as lights, that our language falls away, our bodies fall away, all this intellectualization falls away. And now the last vestige of these things become lights. So it says light, sounds, and rays. So we need to become familiar with those light, sounds, and rays. And you will dissolve inseparably within the lights and Buddha bodies, and Buddhahood will be attained. Remember, I said when you first die and you go into the Bardo of Reality, do you become the light? Or are you afraid of the light? So what we're trying to do is to recognize ourselves as that spiritual light. So now the next paragraph says, O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchokpe Madorje, whatever fearsome and terrifying apparitions appear to you now, recognize them to be natural manifestations of actual reality. Do not be afraid. Recognize these appearances as inner radiance, your own natural luminosity. Upon recognition, you will undoubtedly attain Buddhahood right now. That is that which is called instantaneous perfect Buddhahood will occur at this very moment. Remember this and hold it in your mind. So here now is the statement of what I've been trying to say, that all this is just apparitions. All this is just appearances that we have manifested in our mind. And remember that in this Bardo, all that we are is a mental body who's trying to become a spiritual body. If we had melted, if we had become one with the light, if we had become the light, then there'd be no spiritual body, there'd be no physical body. There wouldn't be any need for it. There wouldn't be a mental body. But here we are, caught up in this. And as we go into our meditations, as we develop our meditations, we begin to recognize these things within ourselves. We begin to recognize our demons, what we might call our demons. And, if we're looking in the mirror, those demons look just like we do. They're us. There are emotions. There are misapprehensions, our misconceptions. There are our confusions and so on, our misguided wisdom. All this stuff is just us. And then, so here it just manifests as these apparitions. We're creating these illusionary images in our mind. So whatever fearsome and terrifying apparitions appear to you now, recognize them to be natural manifestations of actual reality, of your own actual reality. This is actual reality. The Bardo is actual reality. We only see this in our normal state. What we're trying to do is not only see this, but to see that and see that it's two sides of the same hand. It's the same thing. And to be able to recognize that. Once we're able to do that, then we're able to purify all the stuff that we see in this phenomenal world so that it just melts. It becomes neutralized with the Bardo, with the reality of the Bardo. So do not be afraid. Recognize these appearances as inner radiance, your own natural luminosity within yourself. The luminosity, that this awareness that is bringing light to the darkness. If we use the darkness as a simile for our ignorance of what all this is, and that this natural luminosity is our wisdom that illuminates that darkness, now we see the reality of all this. We see our own Buddha nature. We see that our demon nature is stuff that we've created for ourselves. Our natural state is Buddha. Upon recognition, you will undoubtedly attain Buddhahood right now. That which is called instantaneous perfect Buddhahood will occur at this very moment. Remember this and hold it in your mind. So every meditation that we do is an opportunity for Buddhahood, is a liberation, is an experience in the Bardo. If you remember back, when we introduced this, we said that there's 6 Bardos. And in the living Bardo that we're in is the Bardo of dreams and the Bardo of meditation. The Bardo of meditation is a controlled experience that we control, that gives us a glimpse, that takes us into this Bardo of reality. And we prepare ourselves by doing that. When we go to sleep, it's an involuntary experience. It's very difficult to control. But through our meditation, we definitely can control that. It takes work, but we can control that. So this is what we're trying to do again. So when you have that, when you experience that on the cushion, when you experience that during your meditation, you can have this instantaneous perfect Buddhahood. And maybe it lasts that long. But it's that long when there's no time means all time. Once you experience it, it's there with you all the time. Or it's you become, time goes away and you see, be here now. So as quick as it comes like that, it can fade. It can go away. What makes it go away? Our clinging to the demons, our clinging to our emotions, our clinging to our defiled minds, the things that we're not prepared for. We may be exposed, we may be open, we may recognize the Buddha, we may recognize that liberation, but if we're not stable in it, it goes away as fast as it came. However, we can still remember, we still have that experience with us. And that's why meditation is remembrances. That when we really go deep into meditation, it's like remembering these things. Oh, yes, I've been there many times. And I have blocked it up many times. Why did I do that? How could I do that? But then it gets further and further away from that Buddha reality, and we begin justified. We're justified as being a human being. We rationalize being a human being. Oh, it's not so bad. Oh, it's beautiful here. Oh, we had a beautiful day. I got a nice car. I got a nice wife and family and all that, you know, all the rationalizations that we make rather than being free. Remember this and hold it in your mind. So we're reminding, so as we're reading this now, we're reminding the person that we are reading this book for. But really what we are doing is we are reminding ourselves, and this is a heart transmission. Don't think that that person is hovering around you listening to what you say. It's not that simple. It's not that direct. It's not like that. You know, that's a fantasy tale, you know, like a ghost roaming around or something like that. And you're reading this to this ghost. No, it's a heart transmission. That if you really believe this, if you really know this, if you really experience this, your heart is sending out that spiritual light to that being that you have this connection with, that you're reading this for. You are helping them to guide them through the Bardo, through this spiritual light. It's not the words, it's the heart. So now the next paragraph. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchok Pema Dorje, if you do not recognize this visionary appearance now and continue to be afraid, then all the Buddha bodies of the peaceful deities will arise in the form of Mahakala. All the Buddha bodies of the wrathful deities will arise in the form of Yama Dhammaraja, and then all your perceptions will turn into malevolent forces. In this way, you will continue to wander in cyclic existence. So here on page 143, on the left side is a picture of Mahakala, and on the right side is Yama Dhammaraja, and I'll put these up on the screen for a moment. So here's, here's Mahakala, and here's Yama Dhammaraja. So Yama Dhammaraja, I said, are the demons, is the embodiment of all the demons. And then Mahakala now is a Dharma protector who is an emanation of the peaceful Bodhisattva Manjushri, the wisdom of Manjushri, who is there to protect the Dharma in our lives, in our minds. And if we become the protector, if we become Mahakala, if we're familiar with Mahakala, then it's helpful. Now, Mahakala is very fierce looking, no question about it, but that fierceness is there to awaken us, to say, hey, this is the wisdom of the Dharma. You need to be holding on to this. You need to be looking for this. You need to be working for this. So it says, if you continue to be afraid, then all the Buddha bodies of the peaceful deities will arise in the form of Mahakala. So all that wisdom, all that compassion, all coming together as Mahakala, as this Dharma protector. Buddha bodies of the wrathful deities will arise in the form of Yama Dhammaraja, and then all your perceptions will turn into malevolent forces. In this way, you will continue to wander. So, in other words, if you're not rescued by this, then you move further and further away, and you become more and more self-absorbed with your own desire, your own ignorance, your own hatreds, your own emotions, taking form and wanting form. Right now, it's all just mental, but it wants to be in a form. It wants to be in a body. So it's drawing you closer to being reborn again. And whether you're going to be reborn as a human being or you're going to be born as an animal or whatever, depends on how strong that is or how weak your stability is and being able to maintain your Dharma connection. So you can look at it two ways. How strong your karma is to pull you away, or how weak your Dharma connection is. In this way, you will continue to wander in cyclic existence, meaning you're going to be born over and over and over and over again. And this is how we've got to where we are right now. This is why, we talk about that we are migrators, dying and being born again over and over, migrating through all these 6 realms of being a human being. So now we come to the next paragraph on page 144. It says, "O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchok Bema Dorje, if you do not recognize the present appearances as natural manifestations of actual reality, even though you may have been learned in all the sutras and tantras which form the Buddha's transmitted precepts, and even though you may have practiced these doctrines for an eon, Buddhahood will not be attained. Yet, if you recognize now the visionary appearances that are manifesting naturally, then through the understanding of a single essential point and through the understanding of a single word, you will attain Buddhahood." So in other words, it's saying here, if you've been a great practitioner, if you have been a great student, and you could have had many lives of being a monastic over and over and over again, and you became a great adept at doing meditation practice and the tantra practices and doing all these things, but you hadn't really made it your own. It was just all a vicarious experience that you were developing to do all those things. You were doing those things vicariously. You weren't embodying those things. Those things, you were just reading them. You were just like a parrot, just reciting these things without understanding the meaning of them, without having experienced them, without the experience of them, without true samadhi and so on. Then Buddhahood will not be attained. Yet if you recognize the visionary appearances that are manifesting naturally, then through the understanding of a single essential point, then any of these things that we've talked about, through the understanding of a single word, you will attain Buddhahood. So if you have familiarized yourself through experience, then all it takes is just one little essential point to remember this. This is being said here to the being who's in the Bardo, but to yourself as well. You can be on the cushion and you're going through a meditation. And this meditation is taking you down some pathways that maybe you didn't really want to go down, but you're kind of really, you're staying with the meditation and you're seeing yourself, you're seeing these emotions and so on like that. But then if you can, one essential point, if you can say Sukhavati, you can say, Amitabha. You can say Shenreze. Any of these things that spark the spirituality, the peaceful, or the realization of the spirituality of the Buddha nature will bring you out of that wandering, that chasing those negative thoughts will bring you out of that. So I know this sounds maybe crazy. How do I get to that? My goodness, this is such power. What is this like? And it takes lifetimes. It takes many times doing this over and over and over again. We have to go through the vicarious experience to be able to have it stable. And then we allow ourselves to go into the experience of this. And then that vicarious experience all automatically just comes alive. It becomes animated. We see how it works. And we see, oh, yes, I am Buddha. Oh, yes, this is within me.
Lance.
Yes.
That paragraph that you read just right now, the word that comes to mind is devotion.
Okay.
Without devotion, seems as these are just words on a page that we read, recite. We go over, we try to intellectualize these things in our small mind. I think with some devotion that this can really happen, that this can actualize. I mean, that's the thoughts that's coming into my head.
No, you're right. And the devotion has to be cultivated through a trial and error. And then being devoted to that, even when you do err, but being able to, the devotion builds and becomes stable, becomes strengthened as more and more confidence comes from going through this over and over again. The devotion becomes stronger. You just can't flip a switch and expect the devotion to be there. You have to cultivate the devotion. And once you have that confidence, once you have that devotion, then it's got that forward energy. You're just moving, constantly forward and so on. It's the right effort that we're making in everything that we do towards this. So yes, devotion is a huge part of this, and you find yourself becoming devoted to the Bardo Thodol, you devoted to Padmasambhava, devoted to your practice, devoted to your guru, your lama, devoted to the Dharma. Yes, all this begins to take place, and then that's how we see the transformation happening in our lives. That I'm sorry, I can't do that today because I'm really devoted to my practice, and I've got to do my practice. I'm sorry, I'm not going to go fishing with you, or I'm not going to go out, watch a movie in the bars or whatever. I'm going to change. I'm going to be devoted to my spirituality.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Completely.
And it's interesting too that in POA practice, just echoing what you just said, Thomas, we're becoming Vajrayogini or Vajravarahi, and that's a devotional body. So that by doing that, it's always so liberating right then to know that even if my devotion is too limited, hers certainly is not, and I can go along for the ride.
I just want to point out on page 144, on the right-hand side is a picture of Mount Sumeru. Talks about Mount Sumeru, and Mount Sumeru is a spiritual view of phenomenal world. And you see that there's four segments in that circular disc around the center column. And the center column is the mountain, is Mount Sumeru. And all the levels of all the different gods, all the different goddesses, and so on, are all have their homes on this column, this Mount Sumeru. But at the very, very top, you see the crown here is the Buddha field. There's a characterization of a Buddha field. And so the Buddha field is like the top of this, but I think it's better to, it's using this as a way of being able to say that all this is within the Buddha field. And that those four segments are the different continents that we are part of. And we're going to get to that a little bit later in the Bardo Thodol. They'll talk about the four continents. And we're in the continent that is the yellow continent that is called Zambupipa, the continent of human beings. So we'll get to that. And so it's very interesting. So they using all this artwork and so on to help us to kind of, put our mind around, put our arms around, all this, but it's all symbolic. And we have to, learn it, understand what it is, only to let it go. Not to become, if we hold on to it so much, what happens is we get to be, cultish, we get to be superstitious. All these negative things start happening out of our spirituality if we don't remember that all this is symbolic. It's all within ourselves. It's within our body, speech, and mind. And what we want our body, speech, and mind to be is the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones. Okay, so now back to page 144 at the bottom. It says, if immediately after death, you do not recognize the appearances which manifest naturally, these appearances will eventually arise during the intermediate state of reality in the form of Yama Dhammaraja. The largest form assumed by Yama Dhammaraja is as vast as space. The medium form, the size of Mount Sumeru, filling this world's systems, and thus Yama Dhammaraja will appear, his upper teeth biting into his lower lip. So before we go there, so what it's saying here is the largest form assumed by Yama Dhammaraja is vast as space. So we're seeing that all this phenomenal nature can be like a demon to us. It's all relative. It's all confusing. We don't know, what it is. And if we're holding on and trying to fabricate stories and so on, and to rationalize what it is, instead of letting it go, then the whole universe becomes a demon to us. We become afraid of the whole idea of the cosmos, instead of realizing that it's all the body of the Buddha, that it's all natural. We are all part of that, to see and to be comfortable in that. And then it says the largest form assumed by Yama Dhammaraja, vast as space, the medium, the size of Mount Sumeru, filling this world system. So that world system, and I was talking about this column, this Mount Sumeru, where all the gods are, all this spirituality then, all this spiritual science is built in there. And a lot of people spend lifetimes, investigating that. And there comes the superstitions and all this kind of stuff. So then on the next page, 145, it says, thus Yama Dhammaraja will appear, his upper teeth biting into his lower lip, his eyes are glassy, his hair tied up on the crown of his head, his belly bulging and his neck thin, brandishing in his hand the wooden slate documenting past actions, his mouth echoing with the cries of strike and kill. He is drinking brains, severing heads, ripping out internal organs. In this way, it will appear as if his form fills the entire world. This is our biggest enemy, ourselves. The grossness of this is telling us that's how gross we can become if we allow ourselves to be. Liberate yourself from this. We're creating this demon. We're creating these illusions that are taking the form of these enslavements that we are, in the 6 human realms. We're enslaved in these things. Was somebody going to say something? I heard a voice there for a second. Okay. So all these things, are just illusions, to as human beings, that how we think we might experience this, showing us our fear, and saying this fear is all just illusory. Then the next paragraph on 145 says, "O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchok Bema Dorje, when such visions arise, do not be afraid or terrified. Your body is a mental body, formed of habitual tendencies. Therefore, even if you are slain and cut into pieces, you will not die. You are in reality a natural form of emptiness. So there is no need to be afraid. You are a natural form of emptiness." So I think most of you are familiar with the Heart Sutra. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Feelings are emptiness, emptiness is feelings. All these things we're showing that our nature is all just compounded, is all illusory, is stuff that we have fabricated ourselves. And all this mental body is a fabrication of all this stuff. So are we holding on to the mental body, looking for a physical body, or are we using this mental body as a platform to be able to say, bang, let me have my spiritual body. Let me go to my spiritual body. And then it says, "You will not die. You are in reality a natural form of emptiness, so there is no need to be afraid. The forms of Yama Dhammaraja arise too from the natural luminosity of your own intrinsic awareness. They have no material substance. Emptiness cannot be harmed by emptiness. Clearly, determine now that other than arising from the natural expressive power of your own awareness, whatever seems to appear to you externally, the peaceful and wrathful deities, the blood-drinking Harukas, the diverse animal-headed deities, the rainbow lights, the frightening forms of Yama, etc., these are all without substantial existence. If this is successfully determined, all fear and terror will be liberated naturally, just where it is. You will dissolve inseparably with the visionary appearances, and Buddhahood will be attained." So what this is categorizing here, what this is talking about, are all the other days that we're going to talk about of the wrathful deities. Day 8 through day 37 are all these wrathful deities and so on, taking in all these different manifest forms of illusion. And we have to recognize them all as illusory, as symbolic of our fears, our attachments, our emotions, our misconceptions, all these things. So if we look at those as being, the bad part of who we are as a human being, it's part of our human nature to have these things, but it's also part of our human nature to be able to transcend these things. And that's what we're trying to awaken. The Buddha is the awakened human being who has transcended these things.
Rance,
Yes.
you says you will dissolve inseparably and Buddhahood will be attained.
Yes.
So if you're dissolved,
Yes.
what is Buddhahood?
Well, this is a figure of speech. You know, we have to remember that this is a figure of speech for us to be able to intellectualize, you know, something that is beyond that which can be expressed. And the Buddha is something that is beyond our human ability to be able to express it. However, we can experience it. And when we experience it, we experience it as the bodhicitta, as loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And it's really it's that simple for our ordinary minds to be able to try and hold on to that. Just hold on to that. If we try and every concept that we try to devise to explain what Buddha is drives us further and further away from it. And that's what we're looking for here as a mental body. We're looking for more substance. And it's driving us further away from our Buddha nature. So our Buddha nature is something that has to be experienced. And we can experience it in our waking body. We can experience it in our dreams. We can experience it in our meditation. And we've experienced it many times because we've been born many times and we've died many times. So it's being able to get to that one-pointed mindfulness where we can do that. Otherwise, we're having thoughts of our body, we're having thoughts of our intellect, we're having thoughts about our spirituality that is keeping us from just being the Buddha, just being the light. So I hope that explains, tries to give a definition to that. And to that, we're in Buddhism 101 that we have on Monday nights. We are talking about the
King of aspirations.
Thank you very much. The King of Aspiration prayers, which is guiding us to recognize our Buddha nature. So the question of what is Buddha comes up, and I'm going to answer that in a little bit more detail on Monday night. So if you're really interested, tune into that. But for right now, it's got to be, you know, left that it's our true nature that is indescribable. So we've all had glimpses of it. We've all been there. And we've all been repressing it. Or suppressing it, whatever, forgetting it. Our job is to awaken ourselves, to transcend our ordinary human nature. So now to the next paragraph on page 146. Upon recognizing the visionary appearances in this way, be fervently devoted. Tom was talking about it. Be fervently devoted and think, these are my meditational deities. They have come to escort me on the dangerous pathway of the intermediate state. I take refuge in them. So if we look at these wrathful deities as meditational deities, as Sambhogagaya deities, that's healthy. That's what we want to do. We recognize them as meditational deities, as guides to help us through our confusion. I take refuge in them. Remember the three precious jewels. Remember your meditational deity, whichever it may be. Call to your meditational deity by name and pray with the following words. Your meditational deity may be any of these, you know, Tibetan named deities. It could be Jesus. It could be Moses. It could be Krishna. It could be Amitabha. It could be any of these. It's that deity that in your heart that you have made this spiritual connection with, that is an immediate connection, immediate path to that loving kindness, to that bodhicitta. So whichever way that you cultivate that, whatever way your devotion has been cultivated in that way, whichever it may be, call to your meditational deity by name and pray with the following words. I am roaming in the intermediate state. Come quickly to rescue me. Hold me in your compassion, O precious meditational deity. So whoever that is, it doesn't matter. Buddhism is just one system. It's just a system to be able to do this. But if you have a connection with Jesus or Krishna or Yahweh or whomever, is fine. Call to your spiritual teacher by name and pray with the following words. I am roaming in the intermediate state. Rescue me. Don't let your compassion forsake me. So here we are in this state of mind that is in this kind of, I'm going to use the word nebulous, this nebulous state that we can't, see or hear, but we're lost in this state. And rescue me, that through you, I will find the light. The light will guide me out of this darkness, out of this whirlpool of confusion, or however you wish to think of it. So then comes this prayer on page 147. Pray devotedly, yet again, to the assembled blood-drinking deities and recite this aspirational prayer. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated habitual tendencies, may the assembly of male, peaceful, and wrathful deities, transcendent lords, draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, through which all awesome and terrifying perceptions are left behind. May the assembly of the wrathful female deities, Dattvishvari and so forth, support me from behind. And thus encircled, may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Now, when I roam alone, separated from my loved ones, and myriad images of emptiness arise, naturally manifesting, may the Buddhas quickly release the power of their compassion, and may the fear of the awesome and terrifying intermediate state be annulled. When the 5 radiant lights of pristine cognition dawn, may I recognize them as my own nature, without awe and without terror. And as the manifold forms of the peaceful and wrathful deities arise, may I be fearlessly confident and recognize the characteristics of the intermediate state. When I experience suffering as the result of negative past actions, may the meditational deities dispel all such misery. And as the natural sound of reality reverberates like 1,000 peals of thunder, may all sounds be heard as the resonance of the 6 syllables, Om Mani Padme Hum. When I am driven on by past actions, unable to find a refuge, may the great compassionate one, Mahakarunika, protect me. And as I experience the suffering of habitual tendencies and past actions, may the meditative stabilities of inner radiance and bliss naturally arise. May the fields of the 5 elements not rise up as a hostile force, and may I see them as the fields of the 5 enlightened families. Recite this aspirational prayer with deep devotion. It is very important. As all fear and terror dissolve, you will assuredly attain Buddhahood in the Buddha body, a perfect resource. So do not be distracted. So now I'm going to go back and go through this prayer again and just give some definition to some of these words and so on. Page 147. Pray devotedly yet again to the assembled blood-drinking deities and recite this aspirational prayer. So devoted, so as I said before, this devotion builds. The more that we do this, the more devoted we become. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated habitual tendencies. So cyclic existence are the 6 realms of being a human being. So we've talked about that. Anybody have questions? Don't hesitate to ask right now. And driven by deep-seated habitual tendencies. And it's through the habitual tendencies, it's through the throat chakra, it's through the hero awareness holders that reveals to us what our habitual tendencies are. We can hear our fears. We can hear our triumphs, our victories. So we need to be able to pay attention. May the assembly of male, peaceful, and wrathful deities, transcendent lords, draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, through which all awesome and terrifying perceptions are left behind. So remember, we talked about that when we were talking about the peaceful deities, that the male deities like had this light, and there was a light hook that was hooking us. And I referred to it as a tractor beam. That was guiding us, that was pulling us to come home, to come to the Buddha field of that particular deity and so on. So that's what this is referring to. May the assembly of the wrathful female deities, Datvishvari and so forth, support me from behind. And thus encircled, may I be rescued. So the female deity is like the mother. And the mother is there holding our backs, having our backs and keeping us from falling behind. She's not pushing us, but keeping us steady. There, if we fall back a little bit, we can feel her presence. This whole phenomenal nature is nothing but Buddha field. If we choose to see it as Buddha field, if we can recognize it as Buddha field, our Buddha field, and that we share this Buddha field with everybody else. You have your Buddha field, you have your Buddha field, but it's all part of the same Buddha field. So, and thus may I be rescued. So rescued from the darkness, rescued from the fear, rescued from the confusion, rescued from being born again. So we're telling this to the person who we're reciting this prayer to, but again, we have to believe this. We have to have experienced this ourselves to be good at being able to be effective, to be able to recite this for somebody. That it becomes a heart transmission and not just a bunch of words that we're reciting to somebody who doesn't understand the words. Language does not mean anything to that person, to that mental body. From the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. So utterly perfect Buddha, so that we are going to that seminal point of being aware, of liberation, of freedom. So now when I roam alone, separated from my loved ones, so now the being that we're talking to is by themselves, they're gone, and separated from their loved ones. They don't have a family anymore and so on. And there are periods when you are on the cushion where you will have that crossroads. We prepare ourselves for that we liberate ourselves on the cushion. And myriad images of emptiness arise, naturally manifesting. Myriad images of emptiness arise. What is myriad images of emptiness? Myriad images of emptiness is all this phenomenal nature. The screen I'm looking at, this paper I'm looking at, the table I'm looking at, the stuff that you're looking at, your bodies, all this are myriad images of emptiness. Emptiness meaning that it has no inherent nature itself. It is all compounded stuff. It is all just appearances. So as myriad images of emptiness arise, naturally manifesting, it's the natural way things happen. It's part of being a human being. May the Buddhas quickly release the power of their compassion. And may the fear of the awesome and terrifying intermediate state be annulled. So may these Buddhas and what they symbolize, what they represent, not the Buddhas it's just a word that we're using, but it's not some kind of a being that is shaking us. It's this wisdom, this compassion, this bodhicitta that is rescuing us, and it's annulling this. What does annulling mean? It's neutralizing. It's not destroying that stuff, it's neutralizing it. When the 5 radiant lights of pristine cognition dawn. So pristine cognition, remember, is the 5, or pristine cognition is the clear light, is the Rigpa, the mind of liberation, the Mahamudra, the Dzogchen, is pristine cognition, the view of that. And the 5 radiant lights are from the 5 Buddha families. So we've talked about that before. When that dawns, may I recognize them as my own nature without terror. So all this stuff that is arising as demons is our natural stuff, that we have allowed that to manifest. But with that is the natural pure nature of our Buddha nature, which will neutralize all of that confused stuff. They're both here. And what are we paying attention to? We're usually paying attention to the stuff that has a physical nature to it, the stuff that has an intellectual nature to it. That's what we're paying attention to. And we're trying to learn to let that go, to pay attention, to become one-pointed mindfulness with our spirituality. And as manifold forms of the peaceful and wrathful deities arise, may I be fearlessly confident and recognize the characteristics of the intermediate state. So we begin to recognize, what this Bardo of this, what the Bardo is. The intermediate state is Bardo. So here we're talking about the Bardo of Reality, but here it's also being the characteristic of the intermediate state. So we begin to recognize the intermediate state of living, the intermediate state of dreams, the intermediate state of meditation, the intermediate state of reality, the intermediate state of becoming, which is what we're going to get to, on the intermediate state of death. So we begin to see the Bardo as these 6 Bardos, these intermediate states. We see what this is, this merging from one thing to another. May I be fearlessly confident and recognize the characteristics of the intermediate state. So we can experience that now. The intermediate state, the Bardos, see the Bardo. When I experience suffering as the result of negative past actions, may the meditational deities dispel all such misery. When I experience suffering as the result of negative past actions, so when I'm feeling that fear, when I'm feeling that ignorance, when I'm feeling that hatred and so on, may the meditational deities dispel that misery of that fear, of that hatred, of that jealousy, whatever form that negativity is taking, that negative past action is taking. May the meditational deity dispel that. Immediately it's liberated, the blessing. It's like sometimes if you've ever, some of you have had interviews with a Lama, and you have all these questions. You made this appointment to meet the Lama, for 2 weeks ago or so, and you're looking forward to this time that you're going to meet the Lama, and then you go to meet him. Finally, it's your time to go in there, and as soon as you get there, bang, everything is gone. You can't think of anything. You can't remember anything that you had on your mind. Why? Because of their blessings. And what you were taking into there to talk to them was all about you, all about your selfishness, all about your confusion. And just being with them was the blessing that dispelled all of that. and you say, this man has power, or this woman has power. Just by being in their presence blows away my mind, blows away all that negativity. And all I'm feeling is love and compassion. So this is an example of that here. This is what this is saying. May the meditational deity dispel all such misery. And as the natural sound of reality reverberates like 1,000 peals of thunder, may all sounds be heard as the resonance of the 6 syllables, Om Mani Padme Hum. So the natural sound of reality, all this stuff that we see, hear, and feel, whether it's a train going by, or it's a car going by, or it's the birds are chirping, or it's people are talking, the television is on, the thunder is coming and the lightning is coming, all these different things. If everything that we hear is just Om Mani Padme Hum, behold the jewel in the lotus. Behold the jewel in the lotus. It's all just an echo of that. But it's our misconception that says, oh, that sound is driving me crazy. Think of it as Om Mani Padme Hum. Behold the jewel in the lotus, Om Mani Padme Hum. When I am driven on by past actions, unable to find a refuge, may the great compassionate one, Mahakarunika, protect me. So may your meditational deity, whoever it may be, but if you don't have one, then Mahakarunika, the great compassionate one, will protect me. And Mahakarunika, the image is on the left-hand side of this page on page 149, is Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, who is the Bodhisattva of compassion. And he has 1,000 arms and 1,000 hands. And in the palm of each of his hands is an eye. And he sees all the causes of suffering. And he sees all the suffering that is the result. And he sees all the antidotes for the sufferings. And he's carrying implements in some of his hands to be able to help beings to be able to liberate themselves from those causes, from those sufferings, from the results of those sufferings. So the great compassionate one, Mahakarunika. So Maha means great. Karuna means compassionate, and Nika means like this one. So Mahakarunika, the great compassionate one. So it's a Sanskrit word that encompasses all of that. But, so there it is for you. He is the embodiment. Mahakarunika is the embodiment of all the peaceful and wrathful deities. And whether or not it's from another tradition, whether or not it's from a Christian tradition or a Jewish tradition, whatever it is, it's the same thing. At this level, it's all the same thing. We're giving it a name. And maybe you prefer to use the name that you're familiar with, and that's fine. But here it is saying what it means. Oh, compassionate one, Mahakarunika, protect me. And the mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, is the mantra of Mahakarunika, of Avalokiteshvara. Behold, the jewel in the lotus. So when we sit here in this position, we are sitting in the lotus position. This is called the lotus position. Our legs are folded. We're sitting on a lotus cushion. Our hands are at our navel in the meditation position. And this is the position of the Buddha. This is the position of meditation. This is the position of all the peaceful deities, all the Buddhas. So it is a mindfulness. As I experience the suffering of habitual tendencies and past actions, may the meditative stabilities of inner radiance and bliss naturally arise. I'm going to repeat it. As I experience the suffering of habitual tendencies and past actions. So those things that keep coming up through my speech and through my actions, those habitual tendencies, may the meditative stabilities of inner radiance and bliss naturally arise. May my true nature, that true light that I have within myself, may that come and pacify those negativities. May the fields of the 5 elements not rise up as a hostile force. So the 5 elements we talked about are water, earth, fire, air, and space. May the fields of the 5 elements not rise up as a hostile force. So in this phenomenal nature, those 5 elements, that's what everything is made up of. Those 5 elements, those 5 basic elements make up everything. So may they not be a hostile force. And may I see them as the fields of the 5 enlightened families. So may we see our life, may we see this phenomenal nature, not as a curse, not as a punishment, not as a great difficulty, but as an exaltation, as an opportunity for liberation, as a Buddha field, as a heaven, however you wish to express it, as something that is pure and holy, and not as a prison. So we repeat this over and over again. So what I would like to do right now with everybody, if you don't mind, you all have your book. Read this prayer from page 147 to 149, the end of 149. Read it quietly to yourself. Take your time. Each word, absorb each word, absorb each phrase, each sentence. Put it into your personal experience. We can talk about it afterwards, but let's spend 10 minutes. We're going to read this over and over again. Take your time with it. And then after that, then we can close out our session for this evening. Okay. I hope you enjoyed that. What did you think of that? What comments do you have? What questions do you have?
I wish I would know it by heart by the time when that is necessary. It definitely felt good just reading through it. And just like you said, Lance, just let all the words sink in and take it in. I was just trying to picture myself being a nomad in the Bardo. What I liked was this verse here: "May all sounds be heard as the resonance of the six syllables of Mani Padme Hum." I guess this is a good practice to take in, like, every day, and just practice that. All the sounds be the sounds of the mantra, and all the phenomena that you encounter be like the manifestations of the Buddha, I guess. That's my comment.
Very good. Thank you. Yes, Louisa.
Just reading through this prayer makes me want to use it as a meditation, and just I'm trying to find the word. It's just so, it's such a beautiful prayer, but using it as a meditation and taking it one part at a time and just devouring it, feeling it, praying it, and almost just where it becomes you, where you just feel it inside so much that it feels like a new friend that just came into your life, but it's into your heart.
Very good. Thank you.
Lance, when I was reading it, I was struck by the passages that have to do with this huge size and what a shift that is. I mean, on the one hand, the peaceful deities were already plenty intense, and the wrathful deities are even more intense, but they're also immense. And there's just not a word by accident in the Bardo Thodol. So I was thinking last week when I was working a bit with day 8, what can I learn? What am I supposed to realize from that immensity? And there's this wonderful line in the Ratnahedaka, day 8, where they say, "The fires of pristine cognition blazes from the fiery indestructible pores of their bodies." And I could feel that as I worked with it, that because of their immensity, I could see the, instead of wisdom rainbow light, it's wisdom fire from their pores. And I thought, oh, that's me. That wisdom is in me coming out through my pores. And there was something about that, whereas I could still easily keep the peaceful deities a little at arm's length and still had to work with not feeling like they were out there, that these wrathful deities with the fires in their pores really kind of bring it home in a different kind of way. And I can think, yeah, I can be a miserable practitioner and have all kinds of faults and be as ugly as these wrathful deities are sometimes. And yet I've got that wisdom fire shining out of my pores. And so I thought, yeah, maybe that's what that immensity is all about, is actually being able to see the pores.
Very good. Thank you.
Lance, I have two questions. On page 147, midway through, may the assembly of the wrathful female deities. Why doesn't it mention the peaceful female deities?
Well, the peaceful deities, these are the emanations of the peaceful deities. So right now, we're in the section here that is talking about these wrathful deities, in particular, but they are emanations of the peaceful deities, and the female in particular are always the expanse of the Buddha mind. It's the expanse of the body of the Buddha, it's the same thing. So, one is connected to the other. You can't separate them. It is the same thing, but we're talking about it, here in a very fierce way, a very powerful way, when the peacefulness maybe has not been enough, but here this fierceness is greater yet in terms of being able to it's unbearable compassion for us. For us, we would regard this as so much compassion. How can I do this? There's so much compassion because I'm holding so much on to my negativity. How can I have that much compassion to be able to overcome that? Well, these deities do. And they're teaching us, they're showing us how to do that. They're giving us permission to do that.
I'll just ask my question a little differently. Just above that, it mentions the assembly of male, peaceful, and wrathful deities. And then, 3 lines down, it just says the wrathful female deities.
I don't think you can take it that literally.
Just in terms of parallel construction, it would make sense to mention the peaceful and wrathful female deities.
I don't think you should take it that literally. You're parsing the English language and how that was translated, too many things could have happened with that. I wouldn't worry about that. You're looking for things to be wrong.
Well, there are peaceful female deities, though.
All right, I said it.
Okay.
Anything else? Does somebody else have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I am. I mean, we could talk about this some other time, but I am kind of interested in the pertinence of gender that's maintained in this document as it's transitioning. I mean, it seems to be very pertinent when you've got deities conjoined, and when there's opposing energies or different energies that mix together. But then at the same time, as you say, it's kind of a casual use in this context. Just as somebody who's a student of gender studies right now, I'd be interested in that conversation sometime.
Well, I'm not sure, what you're going to. Is it, what is the difference between the masculine and the feminine?
No, I guess I'm wondering, it seems like it's important in some spaces and unimportant in others. And I guess I'm interested in whether that's context or history, or maybe I'm thinking too
Well,
much.
you got to
also.
remember something, that it is a metaphor. It is symbolic, and so symbolically, we're looking at all of this creation as a feminine body. It's the feminine who has the womb. It's the feminine that gives birth to, to the being, so in that way, all this creation, all this physical form is a manifestation of that feminine. The actualization of what happens once that is born, or from whence that comes, maybe is a better way to say it, that from whence that comes is the masculine principle. So they're both wisdom and compassion, and they're both two sides of the same hand. They're indispensable. They're indistinguishable between one another. But in order for ordinary beings to grasp that, we use this anthropomorphic analogy to help us to understand that there is this, masculine urge, and that there is this feminine reception and birth. You can express it many different ways. I'm particularly not good at it, maybe, but I think we have to transgress the dualism of this, the sexuality of this.
Yeah, I'm all about alternating, sort of alternating pronouns in the English language and in anything, in order to sort of create that wave pattern of equity. But that was very helpful. Thank you, Lance.
That's a good point you bring up about language, and that is, in the Tibetan language, there are no pronouns for he or she, or even I or me. There's no words for that in the Tibetan language. And I can't say for the Sanskrit, but I assume for the Sanskrit too. That it's so it doesn't differentiate in that way. And you will hear sometimes the Tibetans, when they're talking, in English, particularly the ones who haven't really been assimilated into our society, they will insert their name into a sentence rather than say I, me, or mine. They'll say, Kempo this, or Drupan that, or Lama that, or whatever, they want to use a pronoun.
Thai, which is an outcropping of Pali, is the same way. It's distinctly missing references to it or anything besides just a state.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
If I could just add to Michael, and first of all, your gender sensitivity is admirable. Thank you. This is just one part, and near the very end of the aspirational prayer that rescues. And a lot of the prior verses have been talking about the female deities. So maybe that puts it in a little more context, but you're right. I see what you're saying about that verse.
Okay, well, time is drawing near. Does anybody else have something that you would like to say?
One quick question, Lance. Page 149, when it talks, or the bottom of 148, the natural sounds of reality reverberates like 1,000 peals of thunder, and may all sounds be heard as the resonance of the six-syllable Om Mani Padme Hum. Now, when the Lama's teaching of all sounds to be mantra, is that what they're talking about? That when we see the true reality of all phenomenon, then everything, all sounds are mantras.
Yes. So in this case, it's Mahakarunika, Om Mani Padme Hum.
Is Mahakarunika a alternate form of just the 1,000-armed Chinrezig, or could it also be the regular form?
I'm not sure what's the difference. What's the regular form and what's the alternate form?
Well, I'm just wondering if Mahakarunika is only a reference to the 1,000-armed form.
I think so. I think it is a direct reference to Mahakarunika, who is the Bodhisattva of compassion. So this is the, the essence of compassion, and as a Bodhisattva, as a human being, so as a human being, this is something that we can experience as a human being. So I think, yes, I think it's very specifically talking about Shenrezig and or Avalokiteshvara. And Avalokiteshvara is said to be, the embodiment of the compassion of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, all the enlightenment. And that's why Avalokiteshvara is so powerful. It's got 11 heads. There's a lot of things about Avalokiteshvara that we've never gone into, but to receive the empowerment for Avalokiteshvara and get the explanation of all the different things, you see how penetrating that compassion is. Okay, well, I hope this was helpful. And I think yes, does somebody have something to say?
Yeah, if I might just say something. One of the things that I experienced in reading this is that I found it a very supportive and embracing feeling of all of these deities taking care of us and leading us, that if people had fear, or if they, like they said, separated from their loved ones, to leave past actions, negative past actions behind us and find refuge. It just seemed like a really supportive time that could take place there.
Absolutely, yes, exactly. I mean, they're here, they are present for our benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And they're everywhere. All within ourselves, but it's all part of this phenomenal nature, is made up of, every atom has oceans of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
And seeing Om Mani Padme Hum everywhere.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so let's recite Om Mani Padme Hum. So we'll recite this 3 times, Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. So the Shri is the seed syllable that's in the center. And the 6 syllables, Om Mani Padme Hum, are going around in a clockwise direction, radiating light to all beings and all the bardos, liberating them from whatever suffering they are going through. So we visualize this mantra going to all beings. Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. 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 Om Mani Padme Hong Shri. Om Mani Padme Hum 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 Shri. Om Mani Padme Hum. Go Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Go Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Go Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. Thank you all very much. Next week we'll continue with day 9. Om Hum. Om Hum. Om Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones. Good night, y'all. Thanks.
Good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.